Not many comics have run as long or remained as consistent and accessible under the direction of a single creator as cartoonist Stan Sakai's Swords Rabbit Samurai series, Usagi Yojimbo. This is Stan Sakai, by the way. Sakai started in comics as a letterer working on the Spider-Man Sunday newspaper strip, which started in 1977. While working on the strip, Sakai worked closely with Stan Lee. The strip featured art by John Romita Sr., Fred Kita, Larry Lieber, and Alex Saviuk. Roy Thomas served as ghostwriter for the scripts. On top of Spider-Man, Sakai served as the letterer for GROO the Wanderer by Sergio Aragonés, who made his first appearance in Destroyer Duck number 1 from 1982. To this day, Aragones continues to furiously produce GROO stories with co-writer Mark Evanier and Sakai as letterer. Aragones and Sakai have even cameo'd in each other's books. Stan Sakai's path to creating Usagi Yojimbo began in the pages of The Adventures of Nilson, Groundthumper, and Hermy, first appearing in the pages of ALBEDO Anthropomorphics number 1 from 1984. Nilson is an anthropomorphic animal story set in medieval Europe and slightly inspired by GROO the Wanderer by Aragones. According to Sakai, his Nilson story was supposed to be this massive 2,500-page graphic novel where Usagi was supposed to appear on like page 1,000. One day, Sakai was drawing a rabbit with his ears and a samurai top knot, a chonmage, in his sketchbook, and with that sketch, Miyamoto Usagi was born. Instead of finishing his Nilson epic, Sakai became enamored with this swords rabbit. Sakai kept aspects of his Nilson story for Usagi, including the anthropomorphic animals and the evil human lord Hikiji, who is one of Usagi's main antagonists. This is just the natural creative process. Usagi went on to make his first appearance in ALBEDO Anthropomorphics number 2 from 1984. Nilson and Hermy have made appearances in, of course, ALBEDO, Critters, Amazing Heroes, Furlough, and yes, in the pages of Usagi. Before I get into the Swords Rabbit, I want to talk about the historical figure who inspired him. Yes, I am talking about the legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. Born in 1584, Musashi certainly accomplished a lot in his life, including winning over 60 duels. According to Musashi's Book of Five Rings, Musashi's personal warrior code, a warrior must be prepared for death at any time. In the Earth Scroll of the Book of Five Rings, Musashi states, quote, "That which a warrior must always have in his mind is the way of death." On top of his skill as a swordsman, Musashi was a Renaissance man. He was a writer, poet, a painter, someone who tirelessly worked to learn more about the arts and self-mastery. Before his death in 1645, at the age of 61, Musashi spent the last years of his life writing the Book of Five Rings and the Dokudo while living at Regando Cave, passing on his teachings to his disciples. Luckily, his teachings are still accessible in the modern day. On top of his historical relevance, Musashi's story has been popularized throughout pop culture for decades. One of the most irreplaceable stories is the epic 1939 novel Musashi by writer Eiji Yoshikawa. This 1,000-page brick tells the story of young Shinmen Takezo as he strives to become the strongest swordsman, forging himself into the seminal samurai Miyamoto Musashi. Yoshikawa's novel heavily inspired Hiroshi Inagaki's samurai trilogy. The films in order are Musashi Miyamoto from 1954, Duel at Ichijoji Temple from 1955, and Duel at Ganryu Island from 1956. This trilogy stars the legendary Toshiro Mifune as Musashi. Mifune's name will come up multiple times in this video. This brings me back to Stan Sakai's Miyamoto Usagi.
Well, Usagi literally means rabbit, and Yojimbo means bodyguard. Yojimbo back then is kind of like a gunslinger in the Old West, so he was like a sword for hire.
It's funny when people refer to Usagi as a manga. While it's deeply rooted in Edo-era Japanese culture, history, and mythology, these comics are as American as Charles Schulz's Peanuts.
My style is more derived from the Western comics, I think. But I am influenced a great deal by the manga that I read as a child. I continually point out Tezuka's work, Dr. Tezuka's work, and that was a big influence on me. especially those old, Astro Boys, or just watching them on TV. I remember watching Astro Boy and Princess Knight and Gigantor and Speed Racer on Hawaiian TV. It's hard to describe the differences between manga and comic books or Western comics, but one of the most apparent is probably the pacing of the story. In Western comics, it's very, very fast, but in Japanese comics, the pacing is very slow. You could drink tea for pages and pages, whereas American comics, you just don't have the luxury because you're limited by the amount of pages that you have. With the manga, the pacing is very, very different, very slower. There's usually a lot more dialogue in Western comics, not only to drive the story, but also just to talk. In Japanese comics, there seems to be very little dialogue, but they have the coolest sound effects. In American comics, it's pretty much you shoot a gun, it's bang bang or pow pow, bang boom boom. But in Japanese, they have sound effects for everything. They have sound effects for the sound the milk makes when it goes into coffee, and we don't have that things here. So Usagi may be about Japanese history and culture, but it's told from a distinctly Western perspective.
However, Usagi's stories are pretty universally accessible. It's such a rich, vibrant world. Usagi's story feels like following someone's life, as the story unfolds in black and white pages throughout the decades. Usagi's wandering search for peace takes him down many eventful detours. As a massive fan of black and white comics, I love seeing Usagi in the original black and white presentation, especially since the amount of well-known and long-running ongoing black and white comics is dwindling. I enjoy the newer stories and reprints in color, but the black and white gives this series a nice samurai cinema or chanbara feel and adds to the handmade quality of Sakai's cartooning. I'll let Stan Sakai talk about Usagi's publication history.
She first appeared in Albedo in winter of 1984, and he's been published more or less continuously since then in Albedo and in Critters, then in his own series from Fantagraphics and Mirage, and now through Dark Horse.
In recent years, Usagi went to IDW where his stories would be published in color. However, as of late 2022, the Swords Rabbit returned to Dark Horse. Given the character's roots as a wanderer, it's kind of fitting that the Swords Rabbit doesn't stay in one place. That said, I hope wherever he goes that Sakai is working in a space where he has the freedom to do his thing. Like with Sergio Aragonés and GROO, Stan Sakai owns the full rights to Usagi. Where Sakai goes, Usagi follows. This is pretty special, considering the fight for creators' rights in comics over the decades. It's nice to have someone have full control over a story they created, without corporations getting super involved in the process.
And when I came back to the States, I tried to publish it, but in those times, all the companies kept the rights. They didn't share the copyrights. So it took almost 12 years for me to publish GROO with a company called Pacific that shared the copyright, because I didn't want to just give it away like everybody gave all the comics away.
I mean, I own Usagi. Yeah. I own the trademark, I own everything. And my deal with all my publishers have always been whatever I give them, they publish. They have no input editorially or artistically or anything. And that came about because of ignorance. I didn't know any better. When they said, oh, of course, and you'll bring us artwork and you own the character, I said, yeah, of course. And every publisher I've gone to, I said, yeah, I own Usagi.
Usagi is a comic filled to the brim with influences. It pulls from Japanese Edo-era culture and history, as well as mythology. Throughout this 10-time Eisner-winning series, Usagi encounters mythological figures like Tengu, yokai, spider goblins, and more. Another great story has Usagi fighting for his life against the ferocious Kappa. The mythology aspect is such a goldmine for storytelling. Sakai will tell 3 stories about Usagi fighting bandits and then slap readers with a story of a demon hunter chasing after a half-spider, half-woman goblin who kidnaps village people. Then he'll throw in another grounded and intensely researched story breaking down shoyu soy sauce production during the Edo era. While it's entertaining, Usagi gives readers a lot to learn. Sakai tends to stay away from modern cultural references in his comic. However, there are so many Japanese cinema references in this series. Sakai, a self-proclaimed Akira Kurosawa fan, even named his series after Kurosawa's 1961 film, Yojimbo.
Yo fucking Jimbo, yes!
Yojimbo, or Bodyguard, follows a ronin played by Toshiro Mifune who wanders through a town and gets ensnared in a conflict between warring crime families. In his series, Sakai has his rabbit bodyguard mirror some of Mifune's body language from the film, like the iconic chin rub. Even Usagi's friend, the rhinoceros bounty hunter Genosuke, is inspired in part by Mifune's roles in Yojimbo and Sanjuro, a grizzled, cantankerous wanderer looking for his next payday. Speaking of Mifune, Usagi's former master, Lord Mifune, is named after the actor. There are nods to a lot of Kurosawa's films, like Seven Samurai, even nods to Kurosawa's post-war films like Stray Dog, featuring an actual character named Stray Dog. Shintaro Katsu's Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman, gets a nod with Zato Ino, the Blind Swords Pig. Katsu portrayed the Blind Swordsman character while producing and sometimes directing over a span of 25 films between 1962 to 1973. Another reference in Usagi is Lone Goat and Kid, a nod to Kazuo Koike and Goseki Kojima's seminal Lone Wolf and Cub. Funny enough, Shintaro Katsu's brother, Tomisaburo Wakayama, played Ogami Ito in the Lone Wolf and Cub movies. There's also a pretty great Usagi Godzilla cameo. There's no shortage of cultural influences, but Sakai uses them in a way where he still makes the story his own. The references don't get in the way of the story. On top of the decades of comics still running to this day, Usagi has appeared on merch, in games, and in animation. Most of his animation appearances have been in episodes of the various Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series.
I'll handle this! Your swordsmanship is excellent. Now let us test the quality of your blade. Now who will challenge me?
Usagi! Welcome to my world, Leonardo-san. Your presence is as fortuitous as it is mysterious. Lord Noriyuki, I am pleased you are safe.
Indeed. Thanks to this Kame ninja.
Most recently, there was a Netflix series called Samurai Rabbit: The Usagi Chronicles. It focuses on a descendant of Miyamoto Usagi. Also, man babies, back off. Don't go after a show that's clearly made for children. Usagi has had plenty of alternate depictions in the comics too. There's an Usagi series for younger readers called Chibi Usagi, which Sakai produced with his family. Space Usagi follows Miyamoto's descendant and mixes samurai storytelling with sci-fi themes. Like the main series, these are still good jumping points for new readers. There's the animated game and alternate versions of Usagi, but Sakai's original comics aren't going anywhere. Sakai's Usagi and Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird's TMNT both debuted in 1984. These anthropomorphic creatures have been pretty closely intertwined since their inception. Usagi was even published by Eastman and Laird's Mirage Studios for 16 issues between 1993 to 1995. Funny enough, there's an entire Usagi story from the Fantagraphics era written and drawn by Peter Laird called The Crossing from 1988. It features a showdown/team-up between Leonardo with his original red bandana and Usagi. Under the direction of a single creator, this series is a testament to one person's pure vision. Even the comic book Usagi/TMNT crossover in Shades of Green from 1993 feels like an actual story. Yes, it was kind of a promotional move to have two Mirage Studios published comics crossover, however, it didn't feel like a move to sell gratuitous amounts of merch. It also felt like a welcome party for Usagi at Mirage. The Shades of Green story and future Turtles crossovers actually build on the world of Usagi and the Turtles. Despite Usagi's media appearances, Sakai is still devotedly focused on producing the comics. Comics are such an engaging storytelling form, even if there are people on this planet who can't be convinced to pick one up. They're just as powerful as any song, game, film, TV series, or novel. Just because there's other media to choose from doesn't negate the power of comics, especially with the amount of work that goes into producing one of them. Doubly so for a comic that's been running as long as Usagi Yojimbo. Now, how to read Usagi? As I've mentioned, Usagi is really accessible. Readers can pick up the most recent single issue and go from there. Check out bookstores, comic shops, libraries, or go digital. A few years ago, I made a video called Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo Where to Start that dives into the different formats and reading order. Some of it is outdated because Sakai left IDW for Dark Horse in 2022, but I still stand by it. I recommend it to anyone who wants an Usagi crash course. The full transcript for this video and a link to my previous Usagi video are in the description. For those who have enjoyed any of the videos, podcasts, or writing I have put out over the years, consider supporting my new Patreon. Everything goes to supporting my work, and supporters will get behind the scenes, project updates, early project access, and their names listed at the end of each video. More supporters means more time to make new videos, and more time to make videos means I can take suggestions based on what others would like to see. That said, none of that is happening without support. In case there is any confusion, is Wits End podcast coming back? No, the finale aired months ago. Also, just in case people didn't catch this last time, will there be weekly episodes in videos like with Wits End? Absolutely not. These Chaos Ensues videos take time to make, so there will not be a weekly release schedule because that's just physically unsustainable. My podcasts and videos will still be available on my website, witsendpod.com, so those aren't going anywhere. This series is welcoming to hardcore completionists and new fans alike. It's kind of an ideal first comic. If someone comes up and says, a comic book about a rabbit with a sword is one of the best comics ever made, just believe them. It's not a hyperbole. That's how Sakai gets his readers. He fools them with these innocent-looking animal characters, then readers become ensnared in his fluid cartooning, deep world-building, and painstaking cultural, historical, and mythological research. Its longevity is a testament to Stan Sakai's immaculate storytelling and cartooning. Share these videos around. Thank you for watching or listening. Chaos ensues.